professional development with Mr.Drover. Gun half dropping in your pocket when we come over. Keep it live. Good development with Mr.Drover.
You got it set up.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah. He was just here for the last half an hour, just sitting waiting for me to set up. So, Matthew Van Schepdael. Now this is a special one.
Yep.
I've wanted you on my podcast since its conception. For those who don't know, for people listening, Matt Van Schepdael here, Shep. We met in university through track and field. And we kind of started off as enemies, I guess, initially. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, well, I think, first off, thanks for having me on, buddy. Good to finally be on professional development with you. And I think I was telling somebody this story not too long ago, but I think the first time I met you, you dumped water all over my head. So that was the first interaction I ever had with you. I guess it was a hidden rule when we were in rookies on the team back in the day that the rookies had to carry the water bottles home, and you dumped water all over my head because I refused to carry your water bottle home. So that was my first interaction with you.
Anti-establishment.
Yeah.
Wow. And after that, I think I found you on campus, and I apologized. I was like, oh, that was really stupid of me. That's the
you must have. I don't remember that part, but you must have, because we got a good friend.
You were walking down I guess in the middle of the university where the dean's offices and stuff like that. You were walking with a bunch of friends, and I was walking past you, and I was like, hey Matt, hey, I just want to say I'm sorry about that or whatever. And you're like, oh man, it's all good, and then it just rolled from there.
Yeah, it just shows your integrity and character right there, man. Yeah.
Before we get into track stuff, because we could talk all day, we could talk shop all day about that, but what I really want to know is because I've known you for more than a decade now. Yeah, since 2014, since your first year university. What do you do? I don't know what goes on in your life. I know you're working at the university right now, sort of working, sort of studying. I'm not really sure what your position is right now and what the goal of whatever you're doing is.
Yeah, no, fair enough, man. You're not the first one to ask that question. A lot of my friends and family members have asked that before. But right now I'm a graduate student at the University of Manitoba. So I'm doing my PhD right now in the Department of Microbiology. It's the Department of Microbiology, but it's more of a biochemistry focus. Our lab specifically focuses on protein biochemistry. So I started off there in undergrad doing an honors project. Really liked research, really got into it, enjoyed kind of working towards just learning and trying to make small advancements in science. I've always been a curious person, so I think it was pretty easy for me to talk to my supervisor at the time and look for a master's position, and from my master's I transferred over to my PhD, and currently writing my thesis, and I should be done here coming up in the spring or end of winter. So It's been a long journey.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. But still, I think I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Right? You're doing the research and you're in microbiology, biochemistry, and then you're advancing science.
Yeah.
Now, what part of science are you advancing? And in that microbiology biochem spectrum, what exactly are you doing?
Totally, yeah. It's kind of funny because, my family asked this question. My family is fairly blue collar, right? So, me being in this intensive science program, I've always had to figure out what's a good explanation for what I do. But in microbiology, essentially, I'm working in a protein biochemistry laboratory. And essentially what we're looking at is structurally characterizing a virulence factor in bacteria. So essentially we have bacteria, some are good, some are bad. And I guess an easy way to explain it is that, bad bacteria, so pathogenic bacteria, that can infect you, have things called virulence factors, which enable them to do so, right? So we can think of things like, flagella for motility, fimbriae for attachment, adhesins to attach onto things like your epithelial tissue when it infects you, right? And it turns out one thing bacteria have are secretion systems. So what secretion systems are, there's about 10 of them. They're basically these proteinaceous membrane complexes on the outer membranes of gram-negative bacteria. So there's gram-positive bacteria and there's gram-negative bacteria. Essentially, most gram-negative bacteria have some form of a secretion system, and what they do is they're specifically designed to secrete proteins into the outer environment, right? Or they could secrete proteins into another cell. So this could be another bacteria, or it could be an eukaryotic cell, right? So a human cell, a human macrophage, right? And essentially the process of secreting these proteins, this is what enables these bacteria to, colonize your gut, to take over for infection, right? To compete against other bacteria, all kinds of things like that. So essentially what my lab's doing is we're structurally characterizing one of these secretion systems, the type 6 secretion system, fairly recently discovered. More specifically, my project, I'm looking at basically a toxin and how this toxin is loaded onto the apparatus. And we use structural biology to figure that out. So structural biology is essentially the process of figuring out the molecular structure of things, right? So if you open a textbook and you see an image of lysozyme, right? Like fairly, or something like any type of protein, right? In a textbook, and like, how did they figure that out, right? Even DNA, how did they figure out the structure of that, right? And essentially back in the 50s, the earliest technique they used was something called X-ray crystallography, where they shoot essentially just X-rays at a crystal structure, so a type of protein that has solidified into a solid state. And it turns out if you shoot X-rays at it, you can get the 3D dimensional structure of that protein, right? And that's important because if you have the structure of this protein, now you can figure out drugs to bind the active site, right? And prevent, this protein from working, things like that, right? So that's essentially what I'm doing in a nutshell. We can break it down a little bit more.
That's the layman terms, right?
Yeah,
that's
very
as
layman
simple
terms.
as you can
Yeah.
do.
It's funny because I'm writing my thesis right now, so I've had to transfer between, simple explanation and then trying to figure out my audience, right?
Yeah.
So now it's a little bit
Make sure you're
trying
lighting
to,
up.
yeah,
Yeah.
trying to prevent not talking too scientifically, yeah.
As I was putting 100% effort into trying to understand what you were saying there, essentially what I got from the bacteria, right? Because lots of people that aren't into science, bacteria, they're thinking germs, gross,
Yeah.
right? But essentially that we have a symbiotic relationship with bacteria, in our gut, around our body,
Yeah.
like, they help like make sure you don't have like, what do you call it, dandruff, right? So there's a bunch of different things bacteria does.
Yeah.
And you're saying this bacteria can alter proteins or shape them or secrete them, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
So it's not secreting other bacteria. Like essentially I'm looking at a virulence factor in bacteria called a secretion system. This one, I don't know if I mentioned this one. There's 10 of them. This one's the type 6 secretion system.
Yeah, you did mention that.
Yeah, and I guess the simplest way, like I was actually at, because when you're a graduate student, you have a lot of mediums for communicating science, right? Some days you are talking to your supervisor and your committee members, and you have to be very careful how you talk about things and use all the proper terminology. And then some days, for example, I was at a seminar at the university talking to the general university audience, right? And I had a very simple explanation of what the type 6 secretion system is. And essentially what it is, we can think of it like a crossbow, right? So a bacteria has a little crossbow with it. And what it does is upon cell contact with a neighboring cell, so it could be a friendly, it could be a foe, it could be a human cell, a eukaryotic cell, it could be a human cell like a macrophage or something like that. Upon cell contact, that crossbow fires and it forcibly injects a protein toxin,
Right.
or what we call effector molecules, into that cell. And depending on if that cell has the what we call an immunity protein to survive that toxin, it will either die, it will either fire back, and so forth, kind of. So essentially, the type 6, it's found in a lot of pathogenic bacteria. So the two bacteria in our lab that we have access to are Salmonella and Pseudomonas. So fairly opportunistic bacteria. Salmonella causes a lot of foodborne illnesses. So for example, Salmonella, why you get foodborne illness is it enables it to colonize your gut essentially and outcompete all the commensal bacteria in your gut. So it establishes this kind of ecological niche in your gut by basically killing off all the competing bacteria by using this molecular crossbow.
Right.
So that's essentially what it does. Yeah.
Because that crossbow can penetrate other bacteria as
Yeah.
well as human cells.
Yeah, it can penetrate prokaryotic cells, so bacteria, or
and
eukaryotic cells as well. Yeah, which is why it's an area of interest, because, the fact that it can target, human cells like macrophages, right?
Yeah.
Which is why, pathogenic bacteria can spread in your body, right? They can suppress your immune system. So that's why it's kind of an area of interest, I guess, because if you target this system, right, and if you understand this system, essentially what our lab's looking at is an alternative to antibiotic resistance. That's a
Right.
bit of a buzzword in microbiology. I think a lot of people might have heard that term kind of thrown around.
Well, from what I understand, it's like since we have so many antibiotic, like amoxicillin or
Yeah.
something like that, that eventually through natural selection we're going to have bacteria that is resistant to most things, if not all the things we can give it or try to counter it with, and then we're basically SOL with anything like that.
Yeah.
Like it's the same with like pesticides, like
Yeah.
superfood, like superbugs, right?
Yeah.
What I was thinking, like when you were talking about how it can penetrate eukaryotic cells, I was thinking that would be like an interesting line of study, because couldn't that be used for a delivery system for different medications, like
Yeah.
vaccines,
Yeah,
whatnot?
did you read
whatnot?
ahead?
No, I did not at all. But that's what
You're getting it. Yeah.
that's what I could like figured out.
Yeah.
Like there has to be an application for what you're studying, right? And
Totally,
if you
yeah.
can penetrate, like if you can put in a protein into a cell, you can change its function, alter it, repair the function,
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah.
So is that sort of what you're like gaining towards this research?
I feel like you were reading my thesis or something, but no, that's an amazing inference from that. Well, yeah, I mean, essentially the first problem is antibiotic resistance. So the World Health Organization, I think, comes out every year and they say, antibiotic resistance is the biggest problem facing humanity, which, you have to agree it can be, right? If we all of a sudden all the medicines we're prescribed at our doctor's office stop working, very problematic, right? So people have, in microbiology field at least, have been really working on this problem. That's either developing new antibiotics that bacteria haven't seen before, so they'll die because they haven't encountered a way to resist them, or it's by finding new therapeutic targets, right? So the type 6, since it's this weapon that bacteria use to infect and colonize a human host, for example, if we can target this thing, then this could be an alternative to something like an antibiotic, right? And then the second thing you touched on was exactly right. So biotechnology is a huge potential application with it. And this is seen in a lot of things, even today in science, where we can take, viral hosts and we can give them, a human message and then, rewire something in our body, right? So for cancers, you see that a lot. But with the type 6, yeah, you're totally right. Essentially what we can do is we can engineer specific drugs or biomolecules onto this thing, and hopefully, since it's specific, we can target, human cells and deliver some type of a drug, right? So it's pretty far-fetched because, we're we're in the super early phases of all of this, but like that would be the hope one day, right? But
Right.
science is always advancing, that soon that method's going to be completely obsolete, right? Like we have things now like CRISPR where we can cut out parts of your genome and put the correct gene back in, so you're making the correct protein, right? So
Right.
science is continuously moving forward, but it's a very interesting idea, but it's going to take a long time to get there.
There's like singular problems that, scientists are working like at different starting points to try to combat, right? And I
Yeah.
guess yours is just one of them.
Yeah.
But like when I'm thinking of that, it's like, oh, you change up the DNA of this bacteria so it like stops doing that secretion or stops being able to inject.
Yeah.
It stops using that mechanism, and then all of a sudden it's like less lethal to humans, like to the host, right? When I think of like CRISPR and all that stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe CRISPR could do it, right? But then I'm thinking of like the cost and delivery, right? If we could make something that was very easily like distributed and cheap,
Yeah.
with this method that could essentially do the same thing, or at least, help with the same outcomes than the more expensive CRISPR method. I think that's something that we have to look at as like scientists too, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is the most easily executable method
Yeah.
of stopping this that we can send to, like
Yeah.
any country, like war-torn country that boom, like,
Yeah. And I mean, I remember thinking one day in grad school that you're talking about things like CRISPR and type 6 and all that. I had this thought one day, a lot of all that we know is essentially from the backs of just graduate students and researchers making small discoveries that eventually accumulate into something, right? And you can look at something like, Ozempic, right? You're like, wow, what a miracle drug. This is amazing.
GLP-1 agonist.
Yeah, but those have been around since the 70s, right? It's just slowly, some people have been making more and more and more progress until the point where, okay, we can, this is going to work in a human host, right? Like, this is incredible.
Without like the risks are going to be better.
Yeah.
I mean, the reward's going to be better than the risk, right?
Yeah, and then what you were talking about with cost too, like, back in the day, the cost could have been insurmountable, right? Like in my field, microbiology, something like DNA sequencing, like sequencing something cost an extraordinary amount of money. But now, I mean, in my lab, I send sequencing out all the time to make sure that I clone something properly for a protein expression, things like that. And it only costs like, $30-$20, right? So the more and more we advance these techniques, the more the cost will come down, right? So you'll eventually find that with things like, CRISPR as a therapeutic, or potentially if we can target the type 6, which I think is going to be quite a whiles away, the cost would come down just the more and more we, advance the science.
And even if it did end up being like, okay, there's really nothing we can do about this, or at least like you've like treaded that pathway.
Yeah,
and like
totally.
you figured it out, and then like scientists can focus their like efforts on another avenue, right?
Yeah.
I gotta say this just because living with and like seeing different people and talking to different people, a lot of them have like a mistrust in science.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of it has to do like with like money, right? Because there's the money in science, right?
Yeah.
Which like if you look at like Ozempic, it's like $400 for one of those pens, or if you look at like some of the insulin controversy with the pricing of that, before they even get to those patents, right? Like I feel like you're like a step before that, right?
Oh, totally.
Like your funding and your program has nothing to do with like the big pharma or anything like that.
No,
right?
No. Yeah, I mean, that might be something worthwhile to talk about too, because I mean, when I was a graduate student early on, I don't exactly know where the money's coming from. But I guess you can think about it in two separate parts. There's academia and there's industry, right? So academia is essentially professors who are paid by the university to do, basic grassroots science, right? In anything, right? And when it comes to industry, you have a company who's funding that research, right? So they're trying to make a product or kind of push something kind of out the door. They still do great research, right? How those two groups of people obtain money is completely different. So essentially with industry, you're getting all the money from the company, right? So if I was, for example, after my PhD, I could potentially do a postdoc at a university, or I could do it with a company. If I do my postdoc with the company, say, for example, like I do a postdoc with Pfizer, right? Pfizer's paying me that money to do that postdoc. When it comes to academia, so profs who make a living as academics, the university will pay them if they get tenure. So they have a process to be accepted and being paid by the university. But how they fund their research is through government grants, essentially. So my professor, for example, will apply for grants from Canada. So there's things like NSERC, CIHR, these kind of government funding agencies where you write an application and you say like, hey, I have this really cool research program. We're trying to figure out this problem to, solve antibiotic resistance. Here's what we're doing. Please give us some money, right? And they'll basically give you money to work on that project, right? So as an academic prof, very stressful to try to find all of this money because you're constantly applying for grants. You need the money for consumables, for equipment, for instruments, for paying grad students. When you're in industry, the money comes a little bit easier because the company's paying you to do that research. Both groups do amazing research. They just work a little bit differently. Yeah. So if you're talking about like things like big pharma, I don't know if it necessarily applies to like a graduate role, but I think if you're in an industrial role, the company has interests to, either find something or to try to push something out the door. Obviously, you don't just push stuff out the door because you're going through clinical trials, right? So
yeah, there's like the process, right?
There's
like the
process,
scientific method, right? Sort of like I wouldn't say eliminates, right? But
totally, yeah.
like they're all regulations that no matter how nefarious a company sounds or whatever, they still have to go through all these steps and like check marks and making sure they're viable, right? I think some of the concern with some people, especially our neighbors down south, right, is like, like this project is being funded by this person, and even with the university, right? Who decides which grants get approved and which grants don't, right? And then like again, like don't get me wrong, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just trying to break it down for people that might be thinking it, that don't have an idea how it's funded, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, I guess the area of unknown that people like fill these like gaps with their conspiracies is that point where that one person has to make a decision or a board has to make a decision. Do we give money to invest in this research or do we give money to invest in this research, right?
Yeah.
And I think people get all like pissy when it's like they think there's like an ideologue that's pushing this type of research compared to this type of research, etc., like that.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been on a grant review panel, so I don't exactly know how they decide who gets what. I know my prof is actually on a grant review panel for CIHR, which is a huge funding governing body in Canada. And we were having a conversation the other day, like it's a panel of scientists talking about, okay, what deserves the funding, what, has gone through all the checks and balances to do this. And sometimes he's surprised too, because, he didn't think that was a good project, whereas other people do, right? So it's extremely competitive, but sometimes, it can be arbitrary in terms of like, people thinking there's pushing one agenda or the other. It's,
well, the way I see it is like, if you lived in it, like the way you are, it's like, have you ever met like scientists? Like I have, like they're just a bunch of nerds, man. Like, so I see that panel. It's just, they're like literally scientifically curious, good-hearted. and like just thinking of what is the most interesting and viable thing that they can make, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's like the human aspect.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like academia or even like a company, right? It's the people you hire or the people that are enrolled in that. And like usually like they're in there and they've invested their time, money, and like everything to get really, really good
Yeah.
at like this specific thing. So I think like that should crush some people's like nervousness on like trusting it, because if you actually know scientists like I know, right? They're just people that like are very interested at getting really knowledgeable
Yeah.
and want to understand whatever they're researching, whether it's
Yeah.
biology, chemistry, or bacteria and their crossbows.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. And I really, it's really cool to see behind the curtains, right? Because even like with that explanation, you explain a very simple thing. We're looking at bacteria. They have this mechanism. They have tons of mechanisms, but we're looking at the specific one.
Yeah.
It seems weird, like it's invisible to 99.99% of people,
Yeah.
but it does happen.
Yeah.
And we could exploit that
Yeah.
mechanism for like the betterment of humanity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no.
Or agriculture or whatever. Like you could do anything with it.
Yeah.
Like you could figure out how to utilize it in some way, shape, or form, or just accept it and like if it's something bad, try to mitigate it in some way, shape, or form. Right? And I think like when you get to the very like details of microbiology, like the boring stuff, like you're looking at like little machines that are you cannot see,
Yeah.
but they're all so complicated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That like people can't think that abstract, and they can't understand the utility of understanding that until they see it at a bigger in a bigger context, right? So that's where I feel like some of the offset is with people that aren't into science and that people are into science, is because we're looking at stuff. You are not me. You are looking at stuff that in order to understand what it's doing,
Yeah.
you need at least like a 4-year undergrad to even
Yeah.
like have an idea of where to start explaining that to someone, like the
Yeah.
details, right?
And I think that's where good science communication comes in handy. And I think that's where science sometimes gets it wrong. Kind of like I said before, I do have a fairly blue collar family. So, you know, there's some times where I'm working in the lab and then, you know, I'll drive over at 7 at night to go help my uncle on the farm, right?
Yeah.
It's a funny juxtaposition going from, you know, talking to my supervisor to, you know, talking to my uncle, right? I love my uncle. I love
Yeah.
farming. I love that stuff. But, you know, he's, you know, hating all this, you know, why they need diesel exhaust fluid in their gas tanks
Yeah.
and everything. And
Clean
he's,
diesel, like
yeah,
an oxymoron. Yeah.
He's pissed, right? And it's funny to be involved in two of those worlds. But sometimes I often catch myself thinking, how do you connect, you know, this group of people to this group of people? They're on such far extremes, right? And I don't think both of their realities are wrong, but I think what you said before, like you almost need a certain level of education to understand that. I do agree, but I think it's also the onus is on scientists to communicate that in a way that's understandable to everybody. And I think that's where, you know, we kind of got some stuff wrong with COVID too. I think there's a good video of Dr. Mike. I think
Yeah.
you've seen that guy online, right?
Yeah.
He communicates science in a great way because he communicates science using a medium where people are at, right? He uses Instagram, he uses TikTok, he breaks things down. He doesn't use complicated words. I look at his videos, I know what he's talking about. I know he's omitting a lot of things, but he's explaining things very simply. And I think that's where scientists get it wrong, is we sometimes don't have the ability to communicate that just to an average everyday person. So, you know, me and my scientist training right now in my PhD, I'm constantly trying to practice, okay? Like I'm writing my thesis right now. I'm being very technical. I'm being conscientious of my supervisors reading this, but you know, the next day I'm doing a podcast with you, or I'm explaining something to my girlfriend, right? So I'm trying to bridge both of those gaps. So I think there's a lot of the onus is on scientists to try to communicate a little bit more simply, I think.
Yeah, and I think like people like you are the conduit for that, right? Because like you are sort of living in both worlds, right? Again, you said like your blue collar family, right? So you kind of know the the demographic that you need to reach.
Yeah.
And like you lived with them, you are them, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you kind of understand how to change that language into, you know, a digestible, you know, an understanding way, right, to these people. Because like, yeah, like someone could be a really good researcher, someone could be a really good clinician,
Yeah.
like, but they could, like, we all know those people that are super smart,
Yeah.
but like you put them in any sort of public speaking domain and
Yeah.
they're like,
I know,
like,
yeah.
right?
That's a lot of
And
people I
then
work with, yeah.
the worst part about that is you have people that are really bad critical thinkers and really bad at, you know, understanding science, or whether it's willfully ignorant or they just literally don't have the media literacy and digital literacy to do it, but they're really good speakers.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the battle, like, I guess we're facing on the internet right now.
Totally, yeah.
Is that you have people that are really good at debating,
Yeah.
right? But they're actually not very knowledgeable, or they're what do you call it? Charlatans,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they can say things really, really convincing. And like, this is one thing that I know somewhere online that I've heard. I think probably Sam Harris said it. He's like, a person could spew out 100 lies in a minute, right? But it would take you like sometimes an hour, depending how complicated the thing is,
Yeah.
to address one of those lies.
There's somebody in the White House doing that pretty
Right?
good. Right now,
Yeah, I know. So
spread and deflect. Yeah.
like knowledge and like, I guess, truth is always going to be in a handicap. Like it's always going to be like harder to explain, because like science, like life, biology, chemistry, like all these crazy things that people are arguing about are complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it takes a lot of effort to
Yeah.
communicate the truth, because at a surface level, you could say something and it could make sense logically with the knowledge you have.
Mm-hmm.
And then people don't have the attention span, or they just want to stick with what they know.
Yeah.
And they don't listen to the details,
Yeah.
which could...
And I think it's funny because I was reading something in The Economist the other day. We were talking about things like, you know, existential threats to humanity, like antibiotic resistance, sure. But The Economist was talking, the number one thing might actually be the spread of disinformation, right? That we're living in an age where we're not living under one shared reality, one objective truth, right? It's so chaotic. And like and I think that's definitely a huge threat right now. But yeah, I mean, I think people are scared of things they don't understand, right? So when I hear, not picking my uncle, but I hear something like that, or somebody in my family say something, who are lacking the background to understand what they're talking about, I actually have a lot of empathy, because I think it is scary, right? It's things you don't understand. It's easy to, outcast them, blame, right? So I think obviously we need to try to, as a country, have a good, healthy, educated population, right? Like, I guess we're relying on our governments to have a fairly educated electorate, but I think also the ownership is on, people like scientists and medical professionals to also communicate things in ways that people can digest, right? Teachers, yeah. Like teachers, right? Like I often tell you too, man, I think teachers are such a valuable position, right? Like to educate the youth is like critical, right? Because those people are going to be making our future decisions. Those people are going to be, getting in all to these jobs, right? So if we don't have a smart, young, talented group of young people going into those positions, like it's bad, right?
Right.
So,
and that actually brings me to this, is because we did touch upon your upbringing a bit, or like at least what your family is like. Now, little Matt Van Schepdael, like 8 years old.
Yeah.
Like I can't picture in my head, maybe it's true, but I can't picture in my head that, oh, when I grow up, I want to study bacteria
Yeah.
and like the secretion system,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, so like run me through it. Like how were you in like grade school, and then how did you end up where you are right now going for your doctorate?
Good question. I mean, 8-year-old me, I don't think I would have pictured myself doing a PhD
Like
at all. Like,
firefighter.
not at all. Yeah. I think the funny thing is, I think I could have, I liked a lot of things, and I think I could have done a lot of things well. Like in grade school, um, actually, I'm not even sure if you know this, but like probably young to grade 8, I mean, I was not a good kid. I was like in the office all the time. Like my name was like literally being called on the intercom all the time.
Matthew
Like,
Van Schepdael, please report to the
literally,
office.
yeah. I don't know what it was. I think I was just a super hyperactive kid until literally I met one good teacher who pretty much changed my life. Like Mr. Boxtel in grade 8. I remember being the class clown, swearing, like trying to impress people, be somebody I'm not. And I remember one day, I think I literally handed in a science report, which was, I'm pretty sure I copy and pasted some of it off Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Like, this is hilarious because I have a PhD right now, right? Or I'm going for one. But I remember him basically bringing me into his office or his desk and saying, like, this is off Wikipedia. Like, he knew right away, and I was like shocked. I'm like, how does he know?
Yeah.
Like, obviously he knows, right?
Right.
But he basically just kind of like looked at me. He's like, dude, you're better than this. Like, this is not you. Like,
He called you out.
He
Yeah.
called me out, and I think maybe it was the first time I was called out. It was actually also the first time I had a male teacher, so maybe the male role model was something I needed. You'd probably know a little bit better than me, like how kids react to their teacher. But for him to just call me out and to say like, hey buddy, like you're better than this, like I can see this is a bunch of crap, pretty much changed everything. Because I think from grade 9 onward, I mean literally I really enjoyed high school. Like it was pretty easy for me, but I also really liked learning. Like I liked math, I liked physics, I liked biology, I liked chemistry. And like, I don't know, by the time I got to university, I think I had a pretty good foundation on a lot of these things. But biology, exercise physiology, I guess with running was kind of the thing I was a little bit more interested in. So when I had that summer research experience, I kind of just grabbed onto that and kind of kept going, and then it kind of ended me up here. So I didn't really expect that or was looking to do that, but I mean, yeah, it just kind of spit me out here. But yeah, sometimes I kind of think like, hey, I could have been a firefighter or like, farming. Like I love farming with my uncle. Eh? I would have really enjoyed that. So, yeah, it's just kind of funny where life takes you. But you do need one good role model. So shout out to teachers, man.
Yeah, there you go. And who was that grade 8 teacher of yours again?
That was Mr. Boxtel in grade 8. It was at Henry G. Izat Middle School.
Shout out to Mr. Boxtel.
Yeah, he was a cool guy.
Well, like that's cool. And I think what you're saying is when he called you out, like, I don't know, for me, like, again, I had a male teacher in grades 6, 7, and 8. Like I've talked to him about him in nauseum on this podcast, like Mr. Gillowitz. And it is crazy, like, when you realize that, like, someone has a high expectation for you.
Maybe that's what it was.
Right? Yeah. Like, you're like, whoa, like, this guy, like, expects me to do well.
Yeah.
Right? And, like, maybe that's saying something where it's, like, if you had, like, other teachers or, like caregivers, guardians, or whatever, when they, like, you think, like, they don't see your potential and you just live up to whatever expectation they accept, right?
Yeah.
And then like maybe like they have high expectations but they haven't communicated because like my family's great and stuff like that, but like when someone of authority says you can do better, I have higher expectations. And I think that moment has to align with a certain level of maturity.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally,
and like there is like magic that happens when it intersects at the perfect point of like your maturity and someone calling you out.
Yeah.
Because you're mature enough not to rub it off or make it a joke, right? But you're not too mature where you're kind of arrogant.
Yeah.
Right? You still see that person as a role model, as like someone of authority that you would trust. And I think, yeah, that high expectations is sort of what I try to instill in my students, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it bounces off because they're not there yet at that maturity level.
Yeah.
Sometimes it clicks, right? Or like sometimes like in my grade, it's usually the girls that sort of get it first.
Yeah.
Like, because that's just the maturity age,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, totally.
But then it's funny because like they'll be doing good, or they like understand that, oh, this person has high expectations, but then they'll look at someone that's not living up to that, someone that's more immature, and like I love it when I see it in their eyes that they identify that as like childish behavior.
Yeah.
Like they're like, why would you cheat on an assignment?
Yeah.
If we're trying to learn something here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was,
and like that is the best moment teaching, being like, oh,
Totally.
this person cares what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? I was teaching math because I was teaching proportional reasoning.
Okay.
Cross, multiply, divide.
Cool.
Like all that stuff, right?
Yep, fun stuff.
Yep. And the kids are actually really good at it. Now, some of them have struggles with multiplying and dividing. Like if I just gave them multiplication tables to do with their head, they struggle with that. I guess it's from previous years or like some stage of developing as you like going through grade school, they miss something. But when I gave them a calculator, I said, focus on the process. Like, what are you trying to do here?
Yeah.
They get it.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was awesome. And then like as a teacher, I was like, I could have wasted the whole semester getting them to like learn their greatest common factors and like lowest common multiples, like all this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. When we could have just been focusing on the process. Because I was thinking as an adult, what would I do?
Yeah.
I wouldn't pull out a long division and like try to figure this out.
Yeah.
So I did like the process with them, and they're studying for their quiz with the assignments I gave them, and they're all working together. And like, you know, as a teacher, you're looking like, are they just copying each other? But they were actually like chirping each other that they didn't know it.
Yeah,
like they're like, oh, are you dumb or something? Like they're like, why don't you know that? And then like the other girl comes up,
Good, healthy
it's like,
competition.
I don't know it. You got to teach me. And then she's like, well, this is how you do it. Like, and they were like arguing about it. And like, and like, I was like, they care. Mm-hmm. Or like they were kind of nervous about the test.
Yeah.
Or they were pissed off that they missed something.
Yeah.
They're like, I forgot my units.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if you failed the test at this point. You just wanted to do well.
Yeah.
Now we have something to work with.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. And that is like, no matter how rough the day is, whatever your school you're in or whatever, that is where it's like, oh, this is worth it.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So-
No, and that's the thing I really respect about, you know, like you and a lot of my best friends are teachers, right? Is just, you know, I think is trying to identify that in kids, trying to kind of figure out, you know, get something to click and get them excited about, you know, their potential, right? And I think for me, you know, I was running around, I was misbehaving, you know, I remember I was in the office a lot. And just for that teacher to, you know, believe in me, it was just the experience that I needed, right? Kind of like we were talking about there about those students, you know, getting super competitive and caring, right? You just got to find that one thing, right? And I think, you know, that's probably what makes a good teacher is being able to identify that one thing to get kids going, right?
Yeah, and it's counterintuitive sometimes. Like, you know me, man, I'm a goofball.
Yeah.
Like like someone walks in, if they're like a type A person, they're like, is this guy a teacher? Like, what is he doing? Like, I'm like jingling keys and like, you know, dancing or making fun of myself or showing them like ugly pictures of myself in grade 8 and stuff like that. Like, you're building that relationship. So when that time comes, right?
There's trust. Yeah.
Yeah, well, trust, right? Like,
They
it's like,
identify
hey,
with you. There's
I'm
trust.
not telling you this just for the sake of making you do stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I'm literally explaining this to you the way that I wish someone explained it to me.
Totally.
Or
Yeah.
some that worked for me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you have to like really like dig into that relationship.
Totally.
Or else like you could be the smartest person in the world.
Yeah.
Like you could be the most academic dude ever with 3 doctorates or whatever, and you couldn't teach a single 8th grade kid.
Yeah.
Right?
No, totally.
So like there is an art to teaching.
Yeah.
That's like
it's like, you know, one of my roles as a graduate student is to teach a little bit. Like I'll TA some courses, right? One of the things I do is anatomy and physiology and bio, just because I like those courses. But
yeah.
it's the same kind of thing you're talking about, right? Like finding an ability to identify with those students. Those students will come to you a lot easier, right? And I think we learned a little bit of this at MiniU too, right? So one of the things I do when I TA is I have all their names down within the first day or second day, maybe.
Yeah.
Probably because MiniU, we were pretty good at it, right?
Yeah.
'Cause there's like 40 kids you got to remember. So same thing here when I'm TAing. I have probably all 35 of their names within a day or two. And just knowing their name, just huge difference in those students. And kind of like what you were saying before, like be the teacher you want it to be. I remember, you know, being an undergrad, the TA did not know my name. The TA did not care. The TA was zooming out of there right after, right? So you're trying to, you know, I always try to think like, you know, what's the teacher I wish I had? You know, it's somebody who's making an effort to, you know, figure out my name, somebody who's hanging past, you know, after hours to stay back if people have questions.
Sharing interests.
Yeah, sharing interests, talking about hockey or whatever the students have interest in. But like, yeah, when you get that solid relationship with a person, like the trust, they will learn a lot better. So I think that's, you know, the thing teachers are good at is trying to figure out, and especially you, man. I've seen you pull up videos and try to do crazy things with your students, man. I think that's what makes you a good teacher is like, you know, trying to identify with kids and then showing kids like, hey, I'm like the same guy as you when I was in grade 8, man.
I still am, man.
Yeah.
Like my body's getting older, but like
Yeah.
I just know a little bit more stuff, but I'm still the same dude.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm glad that education has brought you to where you are. Let's take like a little break and then we'll do part 2 and we'll talk about some track and field.
Sure
some
thing,
running.
man.
All right. Thank you for tuning in to Professional Development with me, Mr. Drover. I hope you found today's conversation insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your fellow educators. You can also connect with me on Instagram or via email to continue the conversation and share your thoughts. Well, until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making a difference, both inside and outside the classroom. I'll see you in the next episode.